Hello everybody, we're going to look at conditional statements today. And really what we're going to look at mostly is what we refer to as an if statement. So basically the conditional statement is essentially a decision. What are we going to do? And as you can see here, it's if you give it one set of circumstances, it'll go one way, and if it doesn't, it'll go the opposite. So the key thing here is it has to have a true or false input or evaluation. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at our grader program here. We were talking before about a program that finds out an average from 3 test scores. So we're going to build on that today. But basically, you either pass or you fail class, right? So at this point, let's not worry about the A through D because those are all going to be unique. Let's just tell the student, well, are you going to pass? So the question always becomes, well, are you going to pass? If you get above a 60, you will, right? That's true. If you get below a 60, fail. So, not to be too maudlin here, but let's base this on whether or not you get above 60 or not. So, if you look at our flowchart, and we've actually done this with a decision before, that you can see we have final av is less than 60. So we have some value, and in this case really a variable, that's going to either be above a 60 or below a 60. And if it's above a 60, it causes a pass. So when you look at this diamond, the final av is less than 60. That's not a statement of fact. What that is an evaluation. So if it's true, so if my final average is below 60, it's going to take this path and say you failed. If not, it's going to go to the next step. Notice I'm using the dots here, which means that I'm connected to another part of the program. We haven't actually moved yet from it. So that's basically the two conditions it has. And from this, we're going to refer to these as the Boolean conditions, which means true, false, on, off, yes, no, anything you can think of in terms of only two results. Now let's go up here to our actual lines of code. So in C#, it's going to say if, and then we're going to put inside the parentheses that evaluation. So this final av less than 60 is right here. And then it just becomes a matter of how are we going to output it. In this case, we're just going to do a message box. So if you put you failed into here, then we just do a message box.show. Uh-oh, this won't run because I'm missing a semicolon, but you get the gist. Now why don't we try putting this into our code from last time. And here is our form from last time, and as you can see we had 3 tests. Now remember, everything that we're doing so far is not in reaction to anything we do up here. The only reaction, or essentially the event and the event handler, is coming through the compute. I know, I'll take that back a little bit because I think we allowed ourselves to click on a label. But all the good stuff is happening in the compute. So we don't want to necessarily, when somebody puts a value in here, so in other words, I get a test score of a 74 or something like that, and put it into test 1, I don't want it to automatically update and say whether I failed or not. Ultimately, what I want to do is have the compute button tell me that. So let's go ahead and double click into the compute button. Now, as you can see, we have all this stuff from last time, and here's our message box show that was to help us catch any false alarms. But the other thing that we have to do is figure out what if the person passed or not. So at this point, we have solved for the average, so we're going to have to go somewhere below this. And since this isn't a try-catch, let's go ahead and skip everything underneath his. And I'm going to take out some of these comments just to clear things up. There, now we have a little bit cleaner code. So the if statement, and we can write it exactly like you saw there, except with semicolons. So if, and we say average. I guess we had final average there, but we'll just use average here since it's already in the code and not rewrite anything. If average is less than 60, and then we say message box show. And like I said before, you failed, and don't forget that semicolon. And this should run. So let's give it a quick run. And here, when we do this run, we want to test it both ways. We want to let the person pass one time, and we want to let the person fail too. So using that stepwise refinement to try to kind of focus on whether or not our programs are going to run in either event. So the first time, go ahead and put in some numbers, and might want to just do the same numbers over and over again. I know it's boring, but at least now we know our average is 70, right? And it says your average is found, your average is 70. Now let's go ahead and change this to 59 to make sure that it runs appropriately. See, now we get the you failed. So that condition, or that if statement, allowed us to figure out whether or not the average was high enough to warrant passing or failing. Now let's just throw a little extra barb in since we have some time here, and we're going to do a nested if. And a nested if means that it's an if inside an if. The best analogy I think I've heard to this is the Russian doll thing. So you have a big Russian doll, and inside there's another doll, and then inside that doll there's another doll, and so forth. That's basically all we're doing. So in this case, we say if you're less than 6, you failed. We're going to still do that, but remember, the only way we get into this piece is if this is true. So this has to be true. If it is, it's going to go ahead and execute this statement. If not, it's just going to skip right over it. So the same thing goes for this. If I put an if statement here, first off, it has to be less than 60, but now let's say if average is equal to 60. And this is interesting here because, and I'm going to, you can technically go two ways. You could actually say message, box, and then we'll do another show. You should probably drop the course. Well, of course, if you've taken 3 tests already, maybe it's too late. But let's just put that out there just in case. And put the semicolon. Now notice it's not giving me any errors here. So before, what I was doing is evaluating and then putting something in curly brackets. But now what I'm doing is I'm just evaluating doing one statement. I don't have to use curly brackets here if there's only one statement afterwards. Now I'm always a little nervous about this because 9 times out of 10 I always add something later. So I like to put these things into curly brackets because then I don't have to worry about what I'm dropping in there. So I will do this throughout the course, even though it's not a necessity for a single statement. But I find it's just good practice and it keeps me from doing errors. And speaking of errors, I don't want to change this to 60 because if somebody's a 60, they're almost there, right? In fact, a 60 equals passing according to this. So what I want to do is say 0. Now these double equal signs are not a mistake. When you use a single equal sign, what that's saying is that average has to equal 0. So take that 0 and shove it into average. In this case, this is posing the question, is the average equal to 0? I don't know. If it's true, do this. If it's false, not. Now, remember our nested again. It's got to pass this in order to get to this, and it will definitely do this. So it's going to come through. If this is true, it's going to say, okay, we're done. Print that out. Now, is this true? Then do it. So if I get a 70, this will never go. You'll never see this. I'll never even get to evaluate it. The only way you can do it is if it's less than 60. Let's talk a little bit to the evaluators here. These are usually referred to as relational operators. So we've used the greater than and less than symbol. Those are good. You can use a greater than or equal to symbol, so you can have that. As you can see, it is 2 in a row. That's fine. And then we're using the equal to symbol here. There's also a pound, a bang, actually maybe not pound, bang, exclamation point, whatever you want to call that, that says it's the reverse of what happens. So in this case, it's a not equal to, but you can actually put this in front of anything and essentially says not before it. We'll come back to that. So in our case, we use the less than, and we could say the less than or equal to, but that's not really fair, because what happens if somebody does get a 60? Then it's going to say we failed. So we got to leave that out. And the equal to 0 is a good one, because that means probably nobody's done anything or nobody's come in and shown up. So it's probably good that we save their financial aid by just telling them to drop the course. So let's go ahead and hit start and see what happens. So if I do the 59, 59, 59, compute, it's going to say you failed. Nothing bad happened. But if I do a 0, 0, 0, it's now going to say you failed because it gets to here. And now it's going to evaluate that 0, 0, 0, and it gives it and says you should probably drop the course. And I guess we should technically put periods there, right? Oops, we can't do that because we have not stopped our executable yet. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. That looks a little more official. And that's basically it. That's how these things simply work.